Hello, I'm Colleen Taylor with TechCrunch TV. Today, joining us via Skype from Mayfield Fund's office in Silicon Valley is Tim Chang, a managing director at Mayfield Fund. He focuses there on consumer technology and mobile apps, and he's written a few articles recently for TechCrunch about the quantified self, and we wanted to talk to him a little bit more about what's going on in that space. So welcome, Tim. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And so just to start, can you explain what the quantified self is? What do you mean when you talk about the quantified self?
Sure. I equate it to, if you remember the Homebrew Computer Club decades ago, I think this whole quantified self movement is very similar to where, personal computers were back in that Homebrew Computer Club era. And what it started off is actually a bunch of geeky people measuring themselves with body trackers and apps and sort of these data measurement tools, and then out geeking each other and seeing who's uber geeky, uber healthy. But my vision is that it's actually a gateway to self-measurement for consumer behavior change that'll hopefully, if we do our jobs right, actually improve the health and lives of all consumers, including the mass markets, the broader markets, everyone from middle America to early adopters. And the basic premise is that if you can measure it, you pay attention to it. If you pay attention to it, you can shape it and change it. It all starts with data and being able to measure things seamlessly and easily. We finally now have the technologies that are cheap enough and pervasive enough that you can do that measurement seamlessly without changing consumer behavior upfront. That's always been the barrier until now.
And so it seems like you've said that the biggest thing that people associate the quantified self is now in health apps, things like the Fitbit, that allow you to monitor maybe how many steps you're taking every day. Can you talk about what those products, where we're at right now with those?
Sure. It started off with things like body hacking and self-measurement, and really just people who are obsessed with their personal data. So it naturally gravitated towards health and fitness, and now more towards nutrition and other things. So we've seen first generations of devices like Fitbit, like the Nike Plus, now the Nike Fuel. I helped to co-found and fund a company called Basis, which I think will be really disruptive. Imagine a heart rate monitor on just a wristwatch that has 5 other sensors. Once you have that heart rate information, it's incredibly granular. So you can tell if people have sleep apnea. You can tell if they're actually relaxed, stressed out. Even in some cases, if there's even potential systemic shifts in their heart rate patterns, meaning if there's maybe even a heart attack or something coming down the road. The key, though, these are consumer devices, not prescribed by doctors, not needing FDA approval over long cycles. And that's the real trend I'm big on right now, consumerized health. And so with these devices, these are things that you could go out and buy yourself, start tracking, and someday they might even have benefits for your doctors or practitioners because they can see all that data.
I see. So a big difference is that, as you mentioned, you don't need a prescription for these things. These things don't have to go through, months or years of FDA approval for it to be in people's hands.
Right. They're not there to prescribe or diagnose you. They are there for you to track yourself. And a lot of times you just want to track your daily behaviors. And that's where the magic happens, is when you can see, oh, if I walk like this or I work out like this, it affects my body fat in this way, or I can track my calories burned and that sort of thing. A lot of the early devices are focused on how many calories that you're burning. It's trying to estimate that through steps or accelerometers. Basis is a disruptive new step, because when you can see the heart signal, then you can get real data and granularity on the calories burned. Holy grail, though, is actually calories in. That's where all these other apps like the Eatery and whatnot, they're trying to actually help you track how much you consume. Because the real battle is actually how many calories you're bringing into your body versus how many being put out. And that's sort of where quantified self is today.
And now here the devil's advocate argument might be that, we have these wonderful nutrition labels that have been required to be on food products for, over a decade now, but no one would say that in that amount of time that the average American has gotten healthier or slimmer. Do having numbers really help people manage their health?
No, and here's why. Ultimately, people don't care about data. They care about insights, meaning just tell me 3 fortune cookie-like things I need to focus on, and then tell me what to do, and if you can, do it for me. Because that's really what kind of the takeaways that we want. When you throw too much data at people, it actually confuses folks. And although we think we want data, data is not actionable and it's not fun. So, the articles I wrote for TechCrunch were talking about the keys to making quantified self work needs to be seamless in terms of the measurement, needs to be interactive, meaning what do I do with it? How do I play with this data? And then the third piece is how do I make it fun? That's where the gamification stuff plays in. And, a bit about me, I did a lot of the early social gaming investments like Playdom and NGMoko. The real lessons where those game mechanics can be applied to non-game fields. And when you marry gamification with quantified self, that's where I think the real fun begins. When it's fun, people will care, they'll stick around, and they'll actually engage with these types of products. Data is not engaging by itself.
I see. So it's important to go beyond the pedometer, it sounds like, well beyond the pedometer. Where do you see this going in the future? I mean, you talk about these little sensors that, now in the connected world can be placed almost anywhere. I mean, are we getting to the stage of having sensors implanted in my liver to tell me what my enzymes are? I mean, how far out do you see this going?
Someday, I do think that it'll be standard place to have implants and whatnot. Some of them will be elective. Some of them will be prescribed by doctors. Tim Ferriss, he actually implanted something to be able to track his metabolism for his book. That's pretty extreme body hacking, but I do think within a decade or two, sort of these implanted sensors or ingested sensors will be commonplace. Some of those will be things we do ourselves just for our own tracking. Others, like I said, will come through the medical channel. But the other way to think about this is that it's not just medical. So your phone is full of sensors itself, and a lot of those signals are being passively tracked for social applications. So we're actually even starting to quantify our consumer selves, not just our physical and health selves, but even our consumer behaviors online. Then when you talk about online, every website already has zillions of sensors in the form of cookies and tracking pixels and whatnot. So this notion of quantified self is not just about health and wellness. It's about your consumer habits all throughout your day, the sites you surf, what you buy, what you like to brag about on your Facebook and Twitter. And this gets to that last piece I wrote about for TechCrunch, which is really the aspirational self. First, you measure it, then you play with it. As you play with it, what you're doing is you're shaping the person you want to be seen as and the person you want to be authentically over time. And that's where it gets really interesting to me.
I see. And I want to talk briefly about an investment that just became public today. Branchout raised a bunch of money, and you mentioned before we started this interview that that this kind of fits into the quantified self, what Branchout does. Can you just explain that a little bit to me?
Absolutely. Until now, we've had sort of paper resumes. Then LinkedIn kind of has an online CV, and that puts your accomplishments and your job titles of the past up there and who you know. The next level of quantifying or scoring your professional self would be, imagine being someplace you shape your professional profile, just like you shape your personal profile on Facebook. It's a weekly habit or daily habit. You talk about the food you eat, the brands you like, the music you like. Branchout wants to be that professional identity for you more than just a resume. If it really does become a habitual place that you shape your professional persona, you'll talk about conferences you went to, professional articles you read, new companies or themes that you're into, a product you launched. As you do that, as you start to really shape your professional persona, it becomes this aspirational professional self you want to be, and there is this scoring going on. Who else thinks you're good at Ruby? Who else thinks you're a biz dev expert? And so with that, it becomes almost like this notion of this living resume, this timeline of who you are. And with that, the ability to score things, man, I could tell you kind of like, oh, X number of people really do think you're a sales rock star, and these 32 people did validate that you worked on that product launch. So imagine that level of scoring even for your professional life.
And where do you see an opportunity for startups to really leverage this quantified self and all this data that is going to increasingly be accessible? What kind of pitches would you like to see going forward? Or what do you think is still sort of a big problem that could be solved and that you would invest in right away if it came to you?
So there is something I'm looking for. Obviously, gamification is really important to me. Companies that use gamification as well as gamification platforms where you help other businesses that are non-game businesses gamify themselves. So these are companies like Badgeville, which is like Omniture for gamification, and Mayfield company called Gigia, which is playing in the same space. So imagine SaaS companies for gamification to help businesses and enterprise get gamified. But then another dimension I'm looking at, what is life going to look like in the post-Facebook era? I like to say Facebook helps you connect with people you actually know in the real world already. doesn't do anything for you to meet new people. So I'm really big into vertical communities that are going to pop up around interests or these other aspirational personas you have. Because if you think about it, people are not black and white. They don't just use, LinkedIn for their professional profile and Facebook for their personal profile. We're all like onions in the sense that we have all these sub-personas and layers to ourselves, right? There's a lot of interests that we have. Each of those interests has its own community, and you want to meet new people in those interests as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of these vertical communities pop up on Facebook and across social networks, across Twitter, across Pinterest, other places as well. But they'll have to do with our vertical selves, our aspirational identities in our passions like fashion or music or snowboarding or gaming. I think Zynga proved you can build a gaming community on top of Facebook. Branchout's proving you can build a professional community on top of Facebook. And I think we have all sorts of other verticals to go. So we're investing in that actively. People who are building out these vertical communities that really play to these aspirational selves, these hobbies, these passions people have, and help them connect with new people out there.
And it seems like it's really potentially bringing people together in real life, and it's getting, tech is not just always going to be us staring at these screens and these machines. It seems like it's all going to go back to how we originally were before this stuff came around in a way.
In some ways, I like to say is that it's kind of like the PC, but especially the tablet and the mobile phone enables us to create find our little tribes again of our interests. But this time around, that tribe might be distributed. Your soulmate, when it comes to retro fashion, might be out in Pittsburgh while you're in San Francisco. But the mobile app makes it real time and able to connect with those folks. One quick example: we have this company called Poshmark. They invented the notion of virtual trunk shows and almost like mobile eBay for fashion. So imagine fashionistas taking pictures of items in their closet and actually trading and buying from and with each other just from the mobile app. That's kind of like an offline, trunk show type behavior, but now made online in real time through these apps.
Well, it's really exciting stuff. It's an exciting future to look forward to. And thank you, Tim, for joining us, Tim Chang from the Mayfield Fund, to talk about all of these things that are happening.
Thank you.